Good morning, everyone. We have live broadcast today with Mark McCloskey. I think we're going to have a very wide-ranging discussion today. Would you agree with that one, Mark?
I think so. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about.
Yeah, we just get never a shortage of that. So where do we want to start? We want to start with this Trump indictment, which is an indictment on our entire legal system that is all political now, and it has
We,
nothing to do with justice.
think about what Trump is being charged with or allegedly charged with, since the indictment doesn't really indict a crime. Well, let's say it did. The allegation is that he had a ledger entry about a payment that his lawyer made to somebody that made a claim against him, which he claimed was false. Well, this is what I do for a living, right?
Mhm.
We make claims against people that we believe were negligent. They deny they were negligent. We then start negotiating on how much money it would take to make that claim go away. We reach an agreement on how much money. We sign a settlement agreement where the people that we accuse of doing something wrong give us money, deny they've done anything wrong, and then have us sign a non-disclosure agreement. That's how our
Right.
business has been going on for as long as there's been Anglo-American jurisprudence. It's called bringing a claim and settling it. Now, the president is alleged to have somehow committed a crime by engaging in that very activity. And obviously, there's no crime there. Obviously, the potential that it could have been a campaign violation, campaign finance violation, has been totally ignored by the Federal Elections Commission. They don't see any crime there. And it is nothing more than a third world nation political coup. I call this whole process coup by subpoena. If you go back to the 2016 election, you think about people like Paul Manafort. Manafort had worked for, I think, George W. Bush, George H.W. Bush. He'd worked for Reagan. He'd worked for Bob Dole. He'd worked for everybody, and it was perfectly fine until he works for Donald Trump. Then he has to go to jail. Think about Roger Stone, same thing. He started working for Richard Nixon, Reagan, G.H.W. Bush, G.W. Bush, Bob Dole, all that perfectly okay, the perfectly fine guy until he goes to work for Donald Trump. Then he has to get arrested. Think about Carter Page. Think about Rick Gates. Think about Steve Bannon. Think about Mike Lindell. This is my favorite. Let's say you're Mike Lindell. And Mike's a friend of ours. He was the second guy to endorse my Senate campaign. But he's going into, what was it, like a Taco Bell or something at 2 o'clock in the morning to get a soda. The FBI shows up, blocks him in, car heading behind, and demands his cell phone. Well, now you're Mike Lindell, and you know that they're out to get you. You know that the FBI is perfectly willing to fake evidence against you because they're the Stasi, they're just a KGB these days. And so you're in a conundrum. Cough up your cell phone, knowing that they'll probably stick something fake on it to arrest you for, or refuse to cough it up and go to jail for obstruction of justice. So you're damned if you do and damned if you don't.
That's
and
right.
Today they're picking a jury in New York State on the libel case against Fox News for reporting that the Dominion machines fudged the election in 2020. Well, I've been a lawyer for 38 years now, 39 years. Every news outlet in the country other than Fox were saying there was no evidence of election fraud. There's not a single scrap of evidence of election fraud in the 2020 election.
Well, which was a lie in itself.
Thousands and thousands of affidavits from people swearing about election fraud, about ballots being pushed through the machines 2 or 3 times, about truckloads of ballots coming from New Jersey to Pennsylvania, about all this kind of fraud. Affidavits are evidence. You win all kinds of lawsuits on affidavits because that's the law. That's evidence. And for courts all over the country and the media to report there is no evidence of election fraud is pure BS. And now if you hold the wrong political opinions, even if you hold the wrong political facts in your hands, you go to jail for it, where you get persecuted, $1.6 billion lawsuit against you by an entity that probably is making more money now out of their Dominion machines than they were when they screwed the last election.
Yeah, Dominion, I think, did have issues. What the Edison update is on the bottom of your screen on election night, where it updates the numbers. Who provides those numbers? They get that information from Dominion machines, don't they?
Yeah.
Now, in those swing states, you could see on live updates This is all there. It's all documented. I don't know why anybody doesn't hammer that home. Maybe Mike Lindell is, but I haven't heard Fox say this. You could see votes actually being taken away from Trump and more added to Biden. Once the votes are counted, you don't take them away, but that was happening throughout these 7 swing states.
Yeah, you can't have fewer votes now than you had 10 minutes ago. I mean, that's just
Right.
ridiculous.
There's your live evidence of the votes being tampered with right then.
And we have friends of ours, people you probably know, who are running for office in county offices in Missouri, particularly in my home county of Franklin County, where they're reported to have fewer votes in the gross number of votes in the election than family members that they knew voted for them. And that's really hard to understand.
And we don't question it.
Yeah, we don't question it. And if you do question it these days, you're an election denier. You're subject to suit by Dominion. You're subject to arrest. You're subject to prosecution. I mean, I really call it coup by subpoena these days. The left, the media are attempting to cut off the head of the Trump wing of the Republican Party by tarnishing the reputations or by raiding and creating false charges against the people that led this Trump revolution.
That's right. I mean, I was involved in the Tea Party from day one, very involved, and we were making some decent progress. I had a difference of opinion from our so-called leader, Darla, about how we should handle things after our second rally in D.C., which was May or June of 2009. It was great success. We were having rallies all over the country drawing people in, right? Mm-hmm. So I wanted to actually convene a convention, our own, for the Tea Party and develop our own platform with planks, all of it. Mm-hmm. Okay. My strategy was to cause the right wing real conservative, because we got to get rid of rhinos, okay, to bring them in under our tent and crush the rhinos that are killing the whole thing. Because if they weren't working with the Democrats, all this big stuff would be done. And he said, no, we're not going to do that. We will look and find our own candidates. He says, okay, but then they could be working using our name, our stature, raising money through our organizations at the state level to get elected to whatever office and just turn around and stab us in the back, which did happen. Mm-hmm. So then the Lois Lerner thing came out, the tax audits, right? Mm-hmm. I got audited. It was all a bunch of BS and I beat it. And it terrified everyone. The Tea Party overnight went from front page everywhere to nothing. Yeah. We still have a few state chapters, right? That's it. Yeah. Are they powerful like they were before? No, they were not. So Obama knew, and now everybody sensed that all they have to do is stick an agency of the federal government against you and shut your ass down. Yeah. And you will quietly slither away, never to raise your head up again. We must stop that. They're using strategies.
Most people are terrified of the federal government, and with legitimate reason. I mean, people that are just out there trying to make a living, trying to, provide for their family and their kids, pay their mortgage and have a car to drive. They can't afford to be sued. I mean, the strategy is, and I've unfortunately been a victim of this myself, is that they bring bogus charges, but you have to pay a lawyer to defend it.
That's
and
right.
Then it goes on and on and on, and the average person cannot suffer that expense. And they have to either have to plead guilty, which almost everybody does in federal court, because when the federal prosecutor stands up in front of the jury and announces that it is the United States of America versus Joe Blow, who do you think the jury is going to go with? So you plead guilty. And then for the rest of your life, they say, aha, like in the case of Carter Page, you pled guilty to a felony. You're a subhuman animal now, and you no longer can participate in society. And my wife and I talk about it all the time. I mean, if you're in a biased jurisdiction like Trump is in New York, or like we are here in St. Louis, if you've got a Soros-funded prosecutor that doesn't give a rat's ass, pardon my language, for the law, but only has a political purpose, if he indicts you in a hostile environment and you go to trial in front of a jury that hates you and wants you to lose no matter what, who will rule against you no matter what the facts are, you get a bogus prosecutor that brings bogus charges against you in front of a hostile jury, you get convicted, and the Court of Appeals is similarly on the left. You have to go to prison just like you did a real crime.
That's right.
Your life is destroyed and you're bankrupt.
we need to revisit this jury of our peers, because that meaning is lost. It's no more applicable. It's no longer applicable in our society. Would you agree with that? When we're a Republican and we're in Democrat territory, do we have peers, or are they now enemies?
It's a jury of your enemies, and it's the same thing as the difference between a democracy and a constitutional republic.
That's right.
The juries no longer can be counted on to apply the law to the facts or apply the facts to the law. They apply their political orientation ahead of everything else. And same thing with democracy as opposed to our republic. Now that we have a democracy where, the way I phrase it is the inmates have realized they can vote themselves the key to the prison, all of a sudden there's a problem. And how do you fix that problem? I mean, when Jesse Waters does his man in the street interviews and people don't know the difference between Napoleon and Genghis Khan, or who George Washington was, or how long the United States has existed, or who fought in the Civil War.
I mean, that's right. Yeah, I saw that.
Yet these people get to vote, right? And people in mental hospitals and nursing homes who have not been adjudicated incompetent, they get to vote. And so when you think about the fate of Western civilization in the hands of those people who are easily manipulated, or, for example, if the voter rights bill, if the John Lewis voter rights bill gets passed, where you can legalize vote harvesting everywhere and make challenging elections illegal. City of St. Louis, where I work, the city owns 10,000 abandoned properties. If you Google any of those abandoned properties, it comes up with the names of people that used to live there. Under the John Lewis Voter Rights Act, each of those no longer existing residents will get a ballot delivered to that doorstep. All of which will be collected by somebody from the city of St. Louis. And guess how they're going to vote?
Democrat. Yep.
Yeah. And that's the problem that I don't know a good solution for. I don't think we should disenfranchise the population, but there ought to be some mechanism by verifying that if people are willing to vote, they ought to know something about the people they're voting for.
We do have the mechanism. We do have federal laws on the books on when federal elections are supposed to be held and why. It's a very interesting history on that. But our federal election laws do not permit mail-in voting. It does not permit early in-person voting.
There's an election day specified in the Constitution.
One day. And there is when you read it, the history of why they did that, it makes perfect sense. So when there's either enforce the damn laws or say, screw it all, we're tyranny, we're tyrants, we're communism, we don't care about anything else. Because right now, that's where we're at. So we do have federal election laws that make what happened in 2020 and 2022 in the federal elections illegal. Yeah. Every state that sent out and counted mail-in ballots, those ballots are fraud, all of them. Yeah. Any state that we always have had an absentee system for people who are not in town or military or whatever, but not to have it 5 weeks before. I'm fine with it being 10 business days before the election. I've had to do absentee a lot because of surgeries and out of town working and this and that. I want to be able to preserve my right to that vote, but not a month ahead of time.
There ought to be a requirement to demonstrate a legitimate need to do absentee balloting.
Some states, I think, still have that.
Yeah, and
sort of used to until recently, I believe they changed that.
Well, and they create. You just have to admire the foresight of the evil sons of guns that wish to destroy us, because they create this COVID fraud. They then use that to change the election laws unconstitutionally in all the states that matter in the presidential election and the balance of power election. Yep. And then every court is afraid to touch it. And why are courts afraid? Because you got people like Chuck Schumer standing on the steps of the Supreme Court building, threatening Supreme Court justices, saying that if Gorsuch and Kavanaugh don't get it right, they'll have to pay the price. That can be nothing but a physical threat against them.
That was a threat. And the best way to deal with the bully is to start hitting back, because they can't take a hit, and eventually they'll figure it out and they'll go away and leave you the hell alone. But as long as you keep bending over and grabbing your ankles, they're not going to leave you alone. They're just going to keep coming after you. And you're right. In 2020, they did not take up any of the challenges that the Trump team made against these swing states.
Yeah, and the people that
you don't have standing or some stupid thing like that.
Yeah, yeah, and the people that stood up and were willing to lift their heads above the noise and say something like Rudy Giuliani. I mean, his life's been destroyed. He got disbarred in New York without notice and hearing. I mean, it's just
that's not even legal, is it?
Well, it doesn't matter. Of course, it's not proper.
Doesn't matter.
Of course, I got a year's probation and a probated suspended suspension of my law license and my wife's for doing absolutely nothing wrong but standing up against the left. But there's only one unforgivable crime in America these days, and that's to stand up against the left. And they use our goodwill and our decency against us because those of us that are true Americans, those of us that respect the Constitution and the rule of law, don't want to have to break the law to uphold the country. And the left has absolutely no problem breaking the law.
See, the left counts on us playing by the rules, and we do. And we have to use the rules in our favor, which we can do, but for whatever reason, we refuse. Like we can use federal legislation, the law that's already been on the books, for 140 years, about why election day is on that date and how our election system was prior to that date, because it didn't used to be on one day. So we can enforce that federal law. What I want to see our red states do is announce, like tomorrow would be great, that they're going to follow federal election laws on their federal elections. The states is different. And any state that does not follow this federal election law, they're going to reserve the right to sue them in federal court, because by not following that law, they're literally disenfranchising the voters in the states that are following the laws by allowing illegal votes to be cast. That is the definition of disenfranchisement.
Well,
put them in the hot seat, Mark, is what I'm saying. Make them defend their position, which they can't.
Well, and that would require, of course, and there being a judiciary that is willing to enforce the law when issues are brought before them. What countries had the highest voter turnout in the history of the world? The Soviet Union, right?
Well,
every time there was an election in the Soviet Union, they'd report a 98% voter turnout, all of them voting for fill in the blank, Leonid Brezhnev, Nikita Khrushchev, Joseph Stalin. I mean,
same way in China.
Yeah. And you get to vote. You get to vote for the party, or you get a bullet in your head.
Yeah, and I'm afraid we're going right down that path right now.
Yeah, and as I said, my favorite example where we are in this concept of coup by subpoena. At the end of World War II, there were 3 different meetings between the heads of the big powers: Russia, the United States, and Great Britain. The third of those was at Potsdam, and Stalin and FDR are there. But Winston Churchill had lost his re-election campaign, and so somebody new shows up from Great Britain. Stalin couldn't understand it. He said, "How can it be that Winston Churchill can lose the election and still be alive?" Because the concept of not being in power and retaining your life in the Soviet Union was unimaginable. But we're getting there in this country. We're getting there when they arrest President Trump on completely bogus charges, and he's going to have to go there maybe, because I doubt that the judge is going to be honest. I doubt that the Court of Appeals is going to be honest.
No.
He's going to have to go there in front of a jury of people that would put him in jail for the rest of his life for chewing the wrong flavor of gum.
That's right.
And then what happens? What is the future of our republic if we permit that to occur?
Well, it's dead. That would be a future. It'd be the most massive mass grave in the history of mankind.
Yeah.
The United States was once here.
Yeah.
Here lies the former Republic of the United States of America.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what we're doing right now. And our people right now, because of their complete lack of action against this, they're helping to dig that grave.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're just so, I don't know, obtuse, stupid, lazy, uninterested. I hear all the excuses. They're too busy. I said, look, I worked 85, 90 hours a week minimum for almost 40 years just to eke out a living. That did not stop me from learning, did not stop me from going to events, did not stop me from researching. It stopped me zero at all. So I never made an excuse not to know. And our people constantly, you've heard it too, Mark, I'm sure, well, I got to do this, and that. I'm too busy.
Mm-hmm.
But see, the Democrats are never too busy.
Well,
They never stop.
Well, that's the thing, and well, here's the way I always ask the question. I ask, do you think your average friend, I'll go with male friends just to be a male chauvinist here, do you think they can name more pro athletes or more politicians?
Oh, definitely more athletes.
And can they name not just the quarterbacks and all NFL football teams, but the major college prospects and who's recruiting them, right? They'll know high school prospects and what colleges are recruiting them. But ask them how many senators a state has, or ask them the name of their own senators, or ask them the name of the congressman from their district. And I'll guarantee you that 90% of the people cannot do that.
You're right. They can't.
And it's a matter of subtle brainwashing. The power elite has made paying attention to politics so emotionally stressful. I can't tell you how many thousands of people have told me when I was in the Trump campaign and my own campaign, we don't watch TV anymore. It's too upsetting. And that's part of the plan.
That way.
That's part of the plan. Keep people, give them a narcotic to live on, call it sports, call it reality TV, and then disincline them from doing which is actually vital to their lives. People will say, I don't get involved in politics. And I say, well, brother, you better, because politics is involved in you.
That's right. And so all those people, they're literally actively digging their own grave for this country.
And then
I just don't know any other way to say it.
And when you think about the rule of law, think about the southern border, and think about how our government is just ignoring the laws that exist on immigration, and for the express purpose of changing the demographics of the country and attempting to influence elections by invading the country with people that they hope are going to be on the dole and therefore beholden to the government.
That's right.
And just absolutely violating every aspect of the law. And then we have an election in 2022, and we elect some Republicans. And now we have control of the House. For reasons that I can't understand, we didn't retain control of the Senate. But the House says the first thing we're going to do when we get control is we're going to impeach the president. We're going to impeach Mayorkas. We're going to impeach Anthony Blinken. Well, maybe I've been sleeping for the last 3 months, but I don't remember that happening.
No, they haven't issued anything. And of course, Mark, you and I are both know. So, well, we're not going to bring forth impeachment charges because we can't convict in the Senate because we don't own the Senate. I don't care. You have to make a statement. Then let the Democrats in the Senate own it. Explain, why didn't you convict? What part of Biden violating our Constitution do you not understand? What part of the Constitution do you think should not be enforced? Protecting our borders is like job number one. Protecting the country from invasion, job number one. Yeah. He's not doing it. It's willful neglect, just like Kim Gardner over here in St. Louis. It's not that he's incompetent. This is what they want to do. This is their goal.
Exactly.
You got Mayorkas carrying out the same thing. Blinken. Where'd that idiot come from? Yeah. Just the whole thing.
Well, let me do this one.
Him own it is what I would do.
Let me go here because I bet most of your listeners don't remember this. In October of 2020, Mark Milley called up his Chinese counterpart and told him that if the United States was going to take any action against China, he would give him advance warning. This is treason, right? And Vicky Hartzler, who was running against me for Senate, she's on the Armed Services Committee. She called him up before the House and asked him, did you in fact do that? And he said, yes. And she says, then I'm going to have to ask for your resignation. Of course, he didn't resign. But, it gets worse because on January the 7th of 2021, Mark Milley has a phone call with Nancy Pelosi. He got the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff talking to the Speaker of the House of Representatives. And she says, well, he's crazy, don't you? And he's got his finger on the nuclear button. Mark Milley says, yeah, I know he's crazy, but nothing's going to happen unless I authorize it. He then calls all his chiefs together and has each one of them make a personal oath to Mark Milley that they will take no action unless Mark Milley approves it. This is a coup. This is a military coup. That's right. This is treason. This is a violation of the basic tenets of the Constitution. This is a military takeover of our government. Have you heard anybody? Have you heard Mitch McConnell Have you heard Lindsey Graham? Have you heard Rand Paul or Mike Lee or Joe Kennedy or any of these people, John Kennedy, any of these people, Ted Cruz, a single one of them even mention it?
Nope. You and I knew about it like when it happened, because we follow these things like it's, what else am I going to do?
Yeah.
But
we don't have lives.
No, I really don't. This is my life. But yes, and then we allow it to happen, and God, I don't know. We're just so comfortable in our stupidity, in our ignorance. Of course, most people don't know they're stupid and ignorant about these things because, they live in their own echo chamber with other people like minds. Mm-hmm. And see, we got to break that. If once they digitize our currency, it's game over. We're done.
Happening right now. Yeah. President signed an executive order this time last year calling for progression to central bank digital currency.
That's right.
We now have the new Fed, right? The new Fed with the non-monetary account-to-account transfers.
Is that even constitutional, though? Because technically now you're not minting coin, right?
Yeah.
We have, because obviously the Constitution mentions who has the right to print money, which is the federal government. Mm-hmm. We didn't have paper money then, so it was called coinage or coin. How do you go from the federal government can print the coins to the federal government doesn't have to print anything?
Yeah.
Anything.
Or even worse, having something called the Federal Reserve, which is not the government, which is a private corporation, which sells money to us.
At interest. And a lot of our founders were like, no, we don't want a central bank for that reason. They're going to be charging us to use our own money.
It's just insane. Henry Ford said the day after that Jekyll Island meeting to set up the Federal Reserve, mm-hmm. He said that if the average person understood what we did here today, there'd be revolution by morning. And here it is, all these years later, and everybody still got their head in the sand. But central bank digital currency, unless everybody wakes up and does something about it, we're all dead ducks. Then we don't have any actual
leverage at all.
You wake up tomorrow morning, if you've got the wrong political opinions, your bank account says 0. Or
mine already does, but
let's say let's say you got your whole career, you've worked, you've contributed money, your employers contributed money to your 401k plan, but the government decided that you've got sick political thoughts. You punch up your account on your computer, it says 0. Or more than that, let's say there's a balancing act, which is the way it's really going to happen. Let's say the government wants you to buy Cheetos, but not Fritos, right? You can spend your money on one thing, but not another. Let's say you can donate money to the Biden campaign, but you're not allowed to donate money to the Trump campaign.
That's right.
Let's say if you've got $1 in the bank, you can donate under central bank digital currency. They've got this thing called negative interest rates, meaning now we have 0 to positive interest rates, right? You borrow money, you have to pay back at least what you owe plus interest. Under central bank digital currency, they can have negative interest rates, meaning the government gives you money and you have to pay back less than 100% of it. And so if you're a politically correct person, the government gives you money. If you're not a politically correct person, the government will reduce the amount of money you have in the bank by your social credit values, so that if you're a bad guy, if you deposit $100, they let you take out 50. It's just, and it's happening. There's a bill pending in front of the Missouri legislature right now to redefine currency and to eliminate all existing forms of digital currency, only accepting the existence of government-issued digital currency and redefining money to not include paper money. Yeah, it's being slid under everybody's nose as if it is a minor technical change to the Interstate Commerce Commission.
Yeah, it's nothing minor about it. People don't understand that the government will have direct access to your digital money.
There'll be nothing else.
No, there'll be nothing else. If you go to the gun store and you buy a gun or you buy some ammunition, they can ding your ass. And says, okay, we have reduced your money or taken all of it. We will replace the money once you return your purchases and you prove that they were returned.
Yeah. Well, on my vodcast a couple of weeks ago, I had visual aids. I had a silver dollar, an ounce of silver, right? That was actual hardcore money. Then I brought up a $5 silver certificate that I had from when I was a kid, right? And it says redeemable in $5 worth of sterling silver at the demand of the holder.
Bearer.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then I held up a $10 trillion Zimbabwe bill. 10 trillion Zimbabwean dollars, which you could not buy a loaf of bread with, right?
That's right.
And now they've done away with that entirely. But a bill representing in ones and zeros 1/3 of our national debt in Zimbabwe, which you couldn't buy a loaf of bread with. And that's right. That's what's coming down the pike, ladies and gentlemen.
It is. And didn't they stop printing those treasury notes that would say that on there?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Like what, 30 years ago or something?
It all says now, it just says legal tender for all debts, public or private. In the old days, it said redeemable by the bearer for whatever the denomination was.
That's right.
And by the way, when $1,000 was a lot of money, you could get $1,000 bill from the bank. Now $1,000 is worth less than $100 was then. But the biggest denomination you get from the bank is a $100 bill.
That's right.
Which doesn't buy lunch for a family of four, barely buys lunch for a family of four at McDonald's these days. And yet, if you take out more than 5,000 of those, you get reported to the feds.
Yeah, it's just we got to stop this, and our window of opportunity is quickly closing.
Oh, I mean, there's so many things where it's closing.
I just want, if I could talk to President Trump, just Mr. President, get your 74 million, 80 million voters behind you, and this is what we need to do. We need to target these entities with our money, and we need to collapse them before they collapse us. We'll start with every major media outlet, every major media conglomeration, which there's only a few of them that control like 85, 90% of the media, news outlets, everything. Stop sending them our money. Imagine if Trump got on TV down at Mar-a-Lago or wherever tomorrow and said, we need you to end your subscriptions with all of your with your cable satellite providers, your dish networks, your DirecTV, your Cox cables, your Time Warners, your AT&Ts, all of them. Cancel them en masse tomorrow. There's no mass protest that needs to take. Nobody needs to take off work because they say we're too busy. Well, this is a lazy Patriots way of fighting back. You can do it from your couch at home. On your device. Now imagine if President Trump would say that. I think that at least half would probably say, you know what? He's right. We'll bankrupt those bastards by next week. Pure and simple. Put them out of business. They are the biggest threat against this country is the media outlets. Whether they're taking the marching orders from the Democrats or they're giving the Democrats the marching orders, it doesn't matter. The point is this. They are the mouthpiece. They are the ones promoting lies and disinformation and lying about us constantly while lying for the communists. We have to take them out. They are public enemy number one.
Absolutely. And I used to talk about the Democrats and their media lackeys. And then a couple of years ago, I changed it to being the media and their Democrat lackeys. But it's more than that. People always ask me, who do you think's in charge? Because obviously that moron in the White House has got nothing to do with it. And I always say the same thing. If you knew their name, they're not in charge. The people that actually pull the strings and control the world, not just in the United States, but this whole, new order, this great reset that we're heading towards. The people that actually pull those strings are people that are so far back in the shadows. Probably even George Soros, probably even Klaus Schwab doesn't know their names. And certainly we don't. But those are the people that are going to do everything. And when you talk about all the different forces seeking to destroy us now, you've got election fraud. You got the southern border. You got the government shoveling unlimited amounts of money to try to create a war with Russia right now. You've got artificial intelligence. The thing that frightens me the most is the acceleration in artificial intelligence, which will actually absolutely divest everybody from access to any real information. This chat GPT that came out last October, did better on the bar exam than the average lawyer, the average law student. And now they've got GPT-4, which is indistinguishable from a human being. In fact, GPT-4 has got a lawyer. It's considered a sentient entity and has got civil rights and is being represented. But here's the thing. On Chat GPT, they've asked a question. This is my favorite one. Show how this is going to influence the world. Question was, what would Columbus have found if he landed in America in 2015? And the computer answers that question cleverly. It says, well, that's a tricky question because Christopher Columbus died in 1506. But let's assume that he actually came to America in 2015. He would find that America is much different than he would have anticipated. It's now a multicultural country with differing points of view. And it goes on to say, and amongst other things, he may discover that he's no longer revered as a hero, but considered by some to be the butcher of the indigenous peoples. So you have this machine which will now provide the power elite slant, the misinformation, the propaganda, and there will be no other access to information. You combine that with what they're working on right now. Right now we have augmented reality, right, where the computer, if you've got goggles on, can add to what the real world is, those things the computer wants you to see and hear. Well, they're now working on digital contact lenses, which will supply that information directly onto your corneas.
Yep, I saw that.
And virtual retinal projection, where it projects it directly into the retina. Mm-hmm. So that, and how long do you think it'll be if this is all happening in a period of months? How long do you think it'll be until they've got implantable devices where it's already in your brain? You can't tell what you're thinking or what you're being told to think. You can't tell what you're seeing or is real or what the machine is making up. You will not be able to tell what you're reading in a magazine. Let's say you're trying to read something. You go to the library, you pull out a publication from 1940 to get some what the real world used to be, except that your brain is putting words in front of your eyes that aren't on that magazine.
Yeah, and it's all, every bit of the programming is going to be done from the point of view of communists to promote that ideology.
Single world socialist government. Right. You will have nothing and you'll be happy.
So damn stupid. I hate to call them that, but they are. If we were not stupid, we wouldn't be in this mess.
That's true. But human beings are herd animals, and you go down to the slaughterhouse and you see the sheep happily walking into the butcher shop.
But our side of the aisle, we've done nothing to intervene on that. Really, we haven't. No. I mean, we talk a good game, but when it comes time to get in the ring and start landing some blows, we just don't do it.
That's because
we are.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Didn't mean to cut you off.
We're right there on the edge of the abyss, and they have our hand on the back to push us over. And we're like, okay, nothing we can do about it. Well, there's everything. We have the money. We have the authority to do what I was just saying, to shut down overnight these media outlets. Stop it cold. We can do that. We can do any of these companies like what we're doing with Bud right now. But with the media thing, when you hit them targeted with tens of millions of people overnight, and you say, these are our grievances, and we're going to have our boot on your neck until you surrender what you're doing and you be a press, a free, honest, open press, and you stop the oppression and the targeting of the American people. This is what we need to start with. Because they're the ones with the big bullhorn, Mark. We all know that. We keep that bullhorn in their hand every month when we send them checks.
Yeah. Well, you know, and then, well, I mean, one of my favorite quotes from Thomas Jefferson was the greatest threat for free democracy is a free press. He foresaw all this 240 years ago when he said that. And you think about it. Here's Jefferson, the drafter of the Declaration of Independence. After he was president, he was so afraid of the government putting him in jail under the Alien and Sedition Act that he would not write letters to people. He would only communicate personally with people or send messengers. I mean, that early after the creation of this allegedly free democratic republic, the former president of the United States was afraid to send mail. And so there's the powers that have sought to destroy our republic have been there from the beginning, and it's been a constant battle. I'm not sure you can beat that battle anymore. And I can tell you, just like you're saying about the media, How hard would it be to crush China? Just get
It's
50
not.
million people to not go to Walmart for a month, right?
That's right. China is more vulnerable. Well, I was going to say than we are, but we're extremely vulnerable because we've offloaded so much of our production of medicines and pharmaceuticals, life-saving devices we have to have, so they could literally stop sending us things and we're going to start dying. Okay,
Yep.
so
The president yesterday, right, announces that we're going to totally eliminate internal combustion engines and go completely to electric cars. Where does the lithium for those batteries come from? Do we make it here in the United States?
No, it comes from strip mining the planet for cobalt, graphite, manganese, the lithium, literally strip mining the planet. If you go up to my campaign website or my Patriots Unite, I think it's up there, but it's definitely on my John Dady for Congress thing on Facebook. I have pictures of these mines. People, especially the younger people, they have no freaking flipping clue what a strip mine is.
Yeah.
We do, because when we were coming up, they were fighting to stop this strip mining of our country because it's horrible. Did you know now they're talking about, because we do have resources, but you have to strip mine it. Strip mining is a bad thing in this country, right?
Oh, yeah.
But they're talking about actually doing it. So our people, and I know I use the E word a lot, education, which is like, horrible to most people. You have to educate yourselves to what the process is. China is going in and they're literally leveraging themselves into all these countries where these deposits are prevalent. They will control the leases. Eventually, they will own the land through their Belt and Road Initiative, which is basically, it's designed to bankrupt the persons or countries that they're helping out, because they put these
helping.
That's right. And it comes with so many strings on it that the country cannot meet the obligations to repay the debt back. China forecloses, they own it. This is how they're doing it. So they're going to control, I'd say within the next 5 years, 100% of all the mines in the world that's needed to create a lithium ion battery. Yeah. And I also have posted on there what a lithium ion pool looks like. They're massive. They're disgusting. There's nothing environmentally friendly about building a battery. Yeah. Nothing. Slave labor is involved. You're literally ripping the planet.
Child labor in the Congo.
That's right. Child labor.
I mean, the United States government shut down mining in Michigan and then spent $45 million to promote strip mining in Congo using child labor.
That's right. And our country is promoting the use of child labor by promoting the use of lithium-ion batteries.
But there's only one reason in my mind why the government wants you to have an electric car. And that's because they can turn off the switch and you're dead.
That's right. They can control you a lot better.
And I saw on the news this morning in St. Louis, one of our local companies announced it bought 3 new electric semis, right? And they were bragging on the ad that they could go 175 to 225 miles on a charge. Well, what's the range of a regular semi with 300 gallons of diesel on board? 2,000 miles.
Yeah, 2,000 miles. Coast-to-coast tanks on them.
Yeah.
A few thousand miles.
And so let's say you're now going to have an all-electric fleet of transport vehicles that have to stop and recharge 10 times during the amount of mileage that a regular semi.
That'll just completely they'd have to have 6 times, 7 times as many trucks on the road to equal the capacity right now in time, logistically. Mm-hmm. So if my semi can run 65 miles an hour for 10 hours, okay, that's 650 miles. If my electric semi can only go 200 miles, period, so there's 3 hours and some change, 3.5, and then it has to sit for 4 hours to charge, then I have to have more equipment on the road to meet my same level of logistics and supply chain to keep it fed.
And then you go back 2 levels, right? Electricity has to be generated. The vast majority of electric generation is based on coal-fired power plants. But then it has to get from the power plant to wherever you are. There's tremendous transportation losses due to the resistance of power lines. And so to get the amount of electricity that you need into your car, instead of pulling oil out of the ground, converting it to diesel where it can be stored essentially indefinitely and then brought in back in mass from where it's manufactured to the tank on your truck, which, by the way, diesel gets 30% more fuel efficiency than gasoline motors, but that's another topic.
It does.
That the energy stays the same from the time that it's turned, that oil's turned into diesel fuel until the time it goes into your truck, and you get a high efficiency burn rate of that material, as opposed to burning coal to make steam, to spin turbines, to make electricity, which then has to go through transmission lines, go through transformers, go to new transmission lines, go to the end user, go through that transmission, that transformer on your pole, come down to your house, and go out to your electric charger for your car. There is tremendous transportation loss.
There is loss of energy. That's right.
It is all designed to cripple the economy, to control the people, and there's no other legitimate basis for it.
That's right. Because I say this to people all the time. I don't know what your response is when you tell this to people, but their eyes glaze over, basically. Yeah.
They've been told since we were in high school that electric good, gas bad.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you this off the air because I don't want people to know what I'm thinking on this other thing. But I think you'll find it absolutely amazing what I will tell you when we get done here. And how's your time looking, by the way?
I'm a little over already, unfortunately.
Okay, so
anybody that's ever heard me in person knows that I'll go on until they bring the hook.
Oh, me too. Yeah, I'm the same way. I'd go for hours. My ex would say, you have to find new friends to talk to about politics, because I couldn't say anything to her at all without her just having a complete meltdown. So, she left, and then I got more involved in politics again. Yeah. Because that's what I enjoy. I like policy. I like creating policy. Fair justice policy. I like to enforce the laws that we currently already have, because we have some good laws. I love our Constitution. As smart as our founders were, Mark, they foresaw a lot of things happening in the future, right? And they built in these safeguards for us. Yeah. Okay. And since we are a constitutional republic, we have all the power. The people do.
Yeah. But although we have ceded it. So I was addressing a We the People organization down in Cape Girardeau 2 nights ago, and afterwards the head of the organization says, why do you use the word democracy instead of constitutional republic? And I wrote back to her and I said, well, the problem is we unfortunately now live in a democracy. We have to fight to get back our constitutional republic. And I use the term democracy in kind of a derogatory framework. But when James Madison was drafting the Constitution, he locked himself in his house for 4 years. He read every book he could get about every form of government that had ever existed to make sure that he understood all the things that can go wrong. And the best, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, as they say. And to condense all that into this tiny document that we call the Constitution of the United States. I did this 2 nights ago. I held up the Missouri Constitution and the United States Constitution. And our founding fathers took the time and expressed their genius in the tightest written, smallest number of words possible to account for the evil that's inherent in human nature and the problems that eventually arise from the desire of human beings to be controlling totalitarians.
One thing that they didn't count on, that they did not foresee, was that our people would be so dumbed down, so stupid, so ignorant of the responsibilities of the country in which they live, of anything. They did not foresee that. Yeah. Now, who was it that said, it's Franklin probably, because he had a lot of quotes, that our government is only designed for a righteous, well-educated populace, and it's not designed for any other. Yeah. We now have the any other. We don't have what is required to maintain our republic. Those of us who do have what's required, we're not being listened to. We're not uniting under one common banner and attacking and pushing back on the Democrats. We're just like negative Nancy's. We're just giving up, and it's just so It's sad.
It's worse than giving up because we're not even giving up. We're not even noticing.
Not even trying.
I use these have a heart mouse traps because I don't like killing my mice. I trap and release them. But I got to tell you this. I'll have 2 of them set up on the counter out at the farm. And a mouse will walk into one and get trapped. The buddy mouse will walk into the next one 2 minutes later and get trapped. And then I set them out the next day, and more mice will walk into those traps. All you have to do is put a little peanut butter on the trip lever, and they very happily walk in and get themselves trapped.
Yeah, because you're letting them go.
Find a difference between that and the average person out there that watches CNN.
There isn't. So I'm all for. I think our best strategy right now would be Trump announcing this is what we're going to do. We're going to take the battle to them, and we're going to shut these people down.
Yeah, I think
it's legal, it's efficient, and you know what? The left would never see that coming, ever in a million years. And talk about this is like you want to keep your enemy off balance. We're not even in the ring with these people.
Remember what Trudeau did during the truckers' rally?
Yes.
He turned off their bank accounts.
That's right.
And I can see that happening overnight here.
If we allow that digital to happen.
If we start mounting any kind of effective resistance, we're going to start seeing that exact same thing because the power elite has invested more than 100 years and enormous resources and enormous conniving and acquiring of assets to take us to this point where we are hair's breadth from irreversible totalitarianism, and they will not go easily. They will not go without a fight, and they don't care.
You're right.
They don't care how many people they starve to death or kill. I mean, the left has killed over 100 million people in the world in my lifetime.
That's right. Yep.
And they won't mind killing 100 million more.
Don't forget, though, everything that you just said is absolutely 100% true. But it was all predicated on one major thing, on one major belief on the part of the left. That belief was that the good people would not stand up and stop them. They counted on that. Mm-hmm. Because if we at any time would have intervened in mass, this would have never happened. Mm-hmm. So they counted on us being this way. And then to double down on it, once they took over the education system in 1980, they made sure we would be this way by indoctrinating, dumbing down, brainwashing, whatever you want to call it. Now 3 generations of kids to believe that communism is good, free market is evil. This is where we're at. So they always had it predicated on the fact that they really firmly believed that the people wouldn't stop them. And they've been right.
Solzhenitsyn said exactly that. He said under Stalin, if anybody had just, when somebody broke into your next door neighbor's house at 3 o'clock in the morning and hauled them away in chains, or if you're going through the mall and you see the KGB come and tackle somebody on an escalator and haul them away, if you would just say something about it, if you just recognize that there was a problem there, the Soviet Union would cease to exist. So the problem is everybody would say, gee, I guess they must have really done something wrong.
That's what they tell themselves.
Yeah.
Yep. Until the next thing you know, communism is here and you're all guilty.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, unfortunately, I am going to have to go. I would go on for forever, but I got stuff I got to do.
Because I got to have you stay put until it uploads, But anyway, everybody, I hope you enjoyed our conversations. This will be posted on my sites, and I'm sure Mark will post it on his as well. And we look forward to doing this again. We always have good talks. Have a good day, everyone.
Thanks for having me on.
All right. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it.